I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. I will be continuing my reading now, again in the Doctrine and Covenants. Our last reading was section 118, but before that we also read in sections 119 and 120. And those sections were about the law of tithing, instituting it in place of the law of consecration. That was all on July 8th of 1838. I also did a video overviewing what is now known as the Missouri Mormon War from August to November of 1838. Now, today we will be reading in section 121, which is in March of 1839. These ensuing months. First, in December, the legislature does hear a discussion and debate about the Mormon difficulties. They hear testimony from Governor Boggs, who reads out all the false allegations. They also do hear from some of the members. But there is a big division among the state legislature because a number of them were involved in the mobs of Jackson County. Some of them are involved in the current persecutions in Caldwell, Daviess County, and they don't want an investigation because they know it will expose them for the evil, despicable men that they are. And so they get the legislature to table everything until the following July, which is a joke because by that time the mobs will have driven the Saints completely out of Missouri, and so the investigation will have only the mob as witnesses. Now, in January, the Saints are making preparations to leave the state. By February, they are migrating out into Illinois. There is a congregation of Saints in Quincy, Illinois, and so many of them start to congregate there. There is also some friendly feelings, eventually, in the town of Commerce. And by the end of February, some are moving to Commerce, Illinois, which will, of course, become Nauvoo. Joseph's own family, his father and mother, and his brother Don Carlos, and his family, they all get out to Illinois in early February. Brigham Young also goes to Illinois at this time. He is now the president of the Quorum of the 12 because Thomas B. Marsh has apostatized and David Patton has been killed. And those were the only two of higher seniority than Brigham Young. This brings us into March. Of course, we have the Saints are trying to visit with Joseph Smith, trying to send him letters. They do get some brief visits, but not much. And just during this whole time, Joseph Smith and a number of the other brethren are in Liberty Jail. Now, Liberty Jail, this is a hole in the ground. It's a pit. And the building is built over it, and there's a hole through the floor of the building going down into the prison cell. Prison cell isn't really all that tall, very cramped space, very bad, very poor conditions. I understand that the jail will be shut down permanently by like 1845 because it is too inhumane and the state just won't tolerate it. But that's the conditions they're in. And that brings us to section 121. Now, the heading to this section, Prayer and Prophecies written by Joseph Smith the Prophet while he was a prisoner in the jail at Liberty, Missouri, dated March 20th, 1839. Recorded in History of the Church, Volume 3, pages 289 to 300. The prophet with several companions had been months in prison. Their petitions and appeals directed to the executive officers and the judiciary had failed to bring them relief. Now, I want to point out that in the church history, that this is taken from a single letter that Joseph Smith writes from Liberty Jail. But it is not one portion. It's not like they took this revelation was here and they just put it in the Doctrine and Covenants. This revelation is, I think, 4 or 5 different sections of the letter combined into a single section of the Doctrine and Covenants. You know, it says it's a letter, it's a revelations and prayer. You will see the voice change. There'll be Joseph Smith will speak, Christ will speak, Joseph Smith will speak again, because it is a letter. And so these are primarily the words of Joseph Smith. Sections 122 and 123 are also taken from the same letter. They're all part of the same letter. Very long letter that Joseph Smith wrote. But let us now read. Section 121. O God, where art thou? And where is the pavilion that covereth thy hiding place? How long shall thy hand be stayed, and thine eye, yea, thy pure eye, behold from the eternal heavens the wrongs of thy people and of thy servants, and thine ear be penetrated with their cries? Yea, O Lord, how long shall they suffer these wrongs and unlawful oppressions before thine heart shall be softened toward them, and thy bowels be moved with compassion toward them? O Lord God Almighty, maker of heaven, earth, and seas, and of all things that in them are, and who controllest and subjectest the devil and the dark and benighted dominion of Sheol, stretch forth thy hand, let thine eye pierce, let thy pavilion be taken up, let thy hiding place no longer be covered. Let thine ear be inclined, let thine heart be softened, and thy bowels moved with compassion toward us. Let thine anger be kindled against our enemies, and in the fury of thine heart, with thy sword avenge us of our wrongs. Remember thy suffering saints, O our God, and thy servants will rejoice in thy name forever. Okay, pausing here for a moment, because this is the first section taken from the letter. This is Joseph Smith's prayer. It is a perfect description, a perfect illustration of the anguish that Joseph Smith is feeling. And note that he's not praying for himself. He's not saying, get me out of this prison. He is saying, avenge your saints. Look on the suffering of your people. His anguish is not for himself only. He is definitely feeling personal deprivation and privation and all that. But his heart, his bowels are moved for the saints, because he is constantly getting reports of them being driven out, that they are fleeing to Illinois. Many of them die in this exodus, just as many when they were chased out of Jackson County. Many of them died that winter of 1833. Many are dying on their route to Illinois. He thinks of his own family, his wife, his children, his parents. They're all suffering from this. He thinks of all the torture that the mob has put the saints through. And you can feel it in this. It actually reminds me of some of the Psalms in the Bible, so it's a beautiful prayer. But now let us read God's response, picking it up in verse 7. My son, peace be unto thy soul. Thine adversity and thine afflictions shall be but a small moment. And then, if thou endure it well, God shall exalt thee on high. Thou shalt triumph over all thy foes. Thy friends do stand by thee, and they shall hail thee again with warm hearts and friendly hands. Thou art not yet as Job. Thy friends do not contend against thee, and neither charge thee with transgression as they did Job. And they who do charge thee with transgression, their hope shall be blasted, and their prospects shall melt away as the hoarfrost melteth before the burning rays of the rising sun. And also that God hath set his hand and seal to change the times and seasons, and to blind their minds, that they may not understand his marvelous works, and that he may prove them also, and take them in their own craftiness. And because their hearts are corrupted, and the things which they are willing to bring upon others, and love to have others suffer, may come upon themselves to the very uttermost. That they may be disappointed also, and their hopes may be cut off. And not many years hence, that they and their posterity shall be swept from under heaven, saith God, that not one of them is left to stand by the wall. Cursed are all those that shall lift up the heel against mine anointed, saith the Lord, and cry, they have sinned, when they have not sinned before me, saith the Lord, but have done that which was meet in mine eyes, and which I commanded them. But those who cry transgression do it because they are the servants of sin, and are the children of disobedience themselves. And those who swear falsely against my servants, that they might bring them into bondage and death, woe unto them! Because they have offended my little ones, they shall be severed from the ordinances of mine house. Their basket shall not be full, their houses and their barns shall perish, and they themselves shall be despised by those that flattered them. They shall not have right to the priesthood, nor their posterity after them from generation to generation. It had been better for them that a millstone had been hanged about their necks, and they drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe unto all those that discomfort my people, and drive and murder and testify against them, saith the Lord of hosts. A generation of vipers shall not escape the damnation of hell. Behold, mine eyes see and know all their works, and I have in reserve a swift judgment in the season thereof for them all. For there is a time appointed for every man, according as his works shall be. I like this response. I like this answer. But before I say anything, I do want to note, that in the letter that Joseph Smith wrote, this response of God is probably about 2 pages after that initial prayer that we read. It's at least a number of paragraphs later. It's not an immediate response in the letter. They are separated. But the response is great. First of all, we have this comparison to Job. Job suffered horribly, but he never turned against God. He did kind of accuse God of not being just. And the prayer of Joseph Smith is beautiful, but at the same time, it does kind of show this same spirit as in Job, in that it is almost accusing God of not fulfilling his promises, of being unjust and allowing this to happen. And we get kind of the same rebuke. Don't worry, that this is going to be about a small moment. And he even says, I think this is why we get the comparison to Job, is because Joseph Smith is kind of making a similar accusation as Job. He said, look, you're not yet like Job. You have suffered a lot. And physically, you probably have suffered just as much as Job did. But your friends are still with you. You know, even in prison, he has his companions, his friends who are staying loyal. There are some who have apostatized, who have turned against him, but for the most part, the majority are still faithful, and they are still his friends. They are not accusing him, they are defending him. And this is what Job didn't have. Job, everybody accused Job. Everybody was against him, except Elihu. Elihu was the one that was not accusing him. But for the most part, Job was being accused by his friends. For the most part, Joseph Smith is being defended by his friends. And in this way, he is not suffering as Job. But also note what will happen to those who do falsely accuse the anointed of God, who do turn against them, who fight against them. This is God saying he has the punishment ready. It is set in reserve to come out at the proper time. This will be fulfilled largely in the Civil War, when Missouri is swept in the violence, and especially, I believe, northwestern Missouri, this area is totally decimated by the Civil War. The people here, all the mobs said, we can live comfortably on the Mormon land. But that land is totally destroyed in the Civil War. So we see the fulfillment of this. We also see, he has promised Joseph Smith that he will once again have a warm reception with his friends. And we see, he does make it out to Illinois. So these prophecies are all fulfilled. But God is also here condemning you, and he talks about the little ones. Offend my little ones. He's talking because in these destructions, the mob did not make any exception for children. They killed children as well, and they caused the stumbling for children. They caused the persecution of children. Even those who didn't kill them were persecuting them. And God is here saying, look, this is going to be punished. They are not going to escape this. He doesn't say if they repent, they will escape it. No, he said they're not going to escape this. This is going to be punished. They cannot escape it, because this is the peak of evil. I'm actually going to leave this here for now. So we'll read this in 2 separate videos. This beginning portion, the prayer and Christ's response. These are 2 sections taken from this letter. The rest of it is taken in other sections. I believe there's at least 2 others, possibly 3. And so we will pick that up in our next reading. I will see you there.